Hello and welcome back to A Fall from Grace. We will be continuing where we left off, which, if you recall, is right after seeing Lysander's little moment of realization where he realized that's like, you know what? I don't want Cedric to suddenly find somebody else that he's gonna move on with, because I am deeply in not love, but obsessed with him, and I kind of need him in my life because otherwise everything's gonna be very, very bad, and I'm gonna keep him whether he likes it or not. Even though it was sort of his idea to sort of get Cedric to find somebody else so that he can move on and then just be in better social standing again, I guess. But it's you know what? Nah. I'm gonna ruin his chances and I'm gonna keep him with me. Also, there was a whole bit of jealousy because when Cedric is dancing with Hortenus and I forget what the other lady's name is, the doe. You could see in the way that he's drawn, it's stop talking, stop being so cute together. Stop getting along. He's mine. But yeah. I mean, it was kind of always obvious that Lysander had he was unusually attached to Cedric, I guess. But we kind of know why now. Sort of. Anyway, so before that though, we did see that Dion had told Cedric and Vincent to talk and get over what it... Well, not even get over it, but talk and then realize, you guys are different people, that you kind of have to know each other again. Or we're going to be seeing a little bit of a time skip though. But yeah, because things are getting closer to their little initial, the plan thing, the main plan, the main heist. But yeah, anyway, so without further ado, let us continue A Fall from Grace. 9 months later. Despite the grandeur of its buildings, Castle Hillsford felt like a small town trying its best to stand out from its neighbors. It was a crossroads for many travelers heading to the southern coast, or eastward to the larger market towns, and many would take up lodgings there for the night, having heard promising talk of the tasty local food and friendly hospitality. Much of its appearance matched that of any other village the bandits had encountered since leaving Hidingstone Forest a couple of months earlier. Many old and crooked Tudor houses decorated each street, along with a dozen plain buildings made out of the local stone. However, the main square and its surroundings boasted elegant Baroque and neoclassical architecture, which was such a contrast to the rest that it was almost comical. It felt as if the two different towns had been plastered together in a clumsy attempt to make the end result look impressive. Hillsford certainly had a lot of history to it, along with the imposing main square. It boasted an old fort dating back to the 15th century, and a stately manor house just a few miles outside the town walls. This was the building Cedric, Victor, and Dion had first heard talk about back at the Hunter's Inn in Hidingstone on the night of Cedric's first mugging. The building that was to host the much-anticipated Grand Masquerade Ball in 3 days' time. Things were already looking hectic. The wind whistled along the busy streets, each filled with a sort of frenzy, as new carriages kept appearing, transporting folks from far and near who had journeyed to the town after hearing talk of the open invite event. Likewise, there was excitement and a spark of joy on the faces of all those who had gathered around the main church that afternoon despite the cold, wintry weather. The crowd cheered as two newlyweds rushed out of the old wooden doors. One was a young rabbit, whose white dress was decorated with a great amount of colorful ribbons. The other was a soldier, tall otter wearing his bright red uniform. 50 or so yards away, Selwyn and Ridley were observing the commotion, leaning on the stone wall outlining the surrounding graveyard. They had both donned a pair of dark overcoats to blend into the crowd and go by unnoticed by the ever-present guards patrolling the streets. Selwyn was wearing a tricorn, whilst Ridley had donned his usual feathered hat. There wasn't much case to be worried about being spotted though, since the bandits had kept a low profile after leaving their old camp behind them, following Dion's instructions. Their objective wasn't just to avoid attracting too much attention, but most importantly, they didn't want to give any hints as to where they might be headed. The masquerade were no strangers to being pursued by any local officers of the law, but they were also well aware that the guards might still be searching for Cedric at Lysander's behest. The coyote had been classed as a missing person upon fleeing his hometown, thus meaning that they had to practice the utmost caution at all times. Since leaving the old forest, everything had gone smoothly, with nary a single mistake on their behalf, which had left the group feeling very confident, if a bit nervous at the prospect of a heist on such a scale as the one that they had been planning. It's always lovely witnessing a happy occasion like this, don't you think, Red? I hope that those two go on to live a good life together. The bear took a while to reply, lighting his pipe. You know how I feel about marriages? Despite the cynical answer, Selwyn kept talking, following his train of thought. I used to go watch people's weddings back when I worked as an accountant. Did you now? Whatever for? I was hardly alive back then. All I did was sit in that office all day. I wanted to escape reality and picture myself living a happier and more exciting life. I'd go to social gatherings, ballrooms, parties and such. I was never able to form any meaningful bond with anyone, so I attended these events at church, just sitting by myself and watching them unfold. Wishing that I had something to look forward to. Ridley put an arm around the house cat, pulling him in for a gentle hug. I'm glad that you've since found a crowd of misfits that you could call your friends and family, Sel. You matter to each and every one of us more than we'd ever be able to say. Now how about you and I play a little game? Which of the people in that crowd would we be able to rob most successfully? That's a game that I can get behind. The fellow in the top hat? He'd be an easy one. You underestimate the caracal dressed in red. I'd empty his pockets in the blink of an eye. Oi, you too. The bandit jumped at the sudden sound of a familiar voice and turned to see Cedric walking their way, carrying a sack on his right shoulder. At Dion's and Ridley's suggestion, the coyote had now taken to wearing a dark red coat and a golden, leafed-in tricorn hat, coupled with a pair of cream-colored pantaloons and a new hunting boots. He'd grown out his hair, which he now wore in a ponytail, and displayed a newly grown mustache and goatee. At a glance, he looked nothing like any of the old portraits, copies of which Lysander had no doubt given the guards, when first instructing them to be on the lookout for his former friend. There was also something different in his posture and walk compared to the Cedric that the lion had lastly met. Mostly an air of confidence and charm that he'd managed to adopt after getting used to living and working with the other bandits, an ease at knowing that he could now command anyone's attention if he wanted to. Upon reaching his friends, the coyote handed over the sack so that the bear could inspect its contents. There you go, Red. All the clothes that you asked for to get to the ball. As he spoke, he juggled a tiny silk purse in his gloved hand. The bear crossed his arms, shaking his head, yet unable to contain a smile. Dion said no picking purses, said. Cedric grinned, unfazed by Ridley's words. What Dion doesn't know can't hurt him, can it? And what if he were to find out? He'd forgive me, of course. You know that I have my ways. The bear burst out laughing. You liar. Your dick is good, but it ain't that good, said. When did I talk about sex? He'd forgive me since I am such an honest and charming lad. After rapidly eyeing his surroundings as he spoke, upon noticing that there was no one else in their vicinity, the coyote leaned forward to give Ridley a quick kiss. My, we really have corrupted you, boy. As if nothing had transpired, Cedric moved to the bear's side and patted Selwyn's left shoulder, beaming at the friendly house cat. How are you feeling today, Sel? Whatever the contents of that drink Hollis gave you were, I hope that they did the trick with your headache. Ah, thank you, Cedric. I'm doing much better. It's a shame my body often hates me as much as it does. Offer to get Selwyn something. Would you like me to get you something to eat? You need to make sure that you have enough strength to get back to the camp. The cat waved his right hand dismissively. Don't worry about me. I had myself a Cornish pastry that I bought from a vendor just about a half an hour ago. It was really good, actually. I ended up getting one too. This rogue seduced me into it. Do you regret eating it? No, I just... Well then, what on earth are you complaining about? I wasn't complaining, you silly goose. You're saying that you had no opinion, and yet you had to voice it anyway. I see. The bear rolled his eyes, annoyed at not being able to think of a quick comeback. Where's that Doberman when I need him? Anyway, enough dawdling, you lot. You mentioned Hollis just now. Where did he say that he had left his carriage? Just outside the southern gate. He's been stocking up on food and drink. Noted. And what about the boyfriend of yours? Where's he gone? He chose to stay with Hollis to help him out. I'm just a one-man man. Someone took a few steps away from the others, gesturing at them to follow him. Right. Well, I think that we are all done here. Shall we go meet up with Dion and Blake? Aye, let's. They walk over to the crowded main square, attempting to spot their leader amongst the masses that had shown up to attend a play performed by a traveling theater company. A rickety wooden stage had been set up at the center of the square, without a painted backdrop, so that the actors and props they were using could be visible from all angles. A familiar canine figure slid through the crowd, rushing up to greet his companions. About time, you lot. I would have shot someone if I had to stand in a minute more of this awful comedy. Easy now, Blake. Where's Dion? What do you think? Front fucking row. Try not to stand out, he says. Blend in with the crowd, he says. 7-foot tall hyena in front row. You can't make this shit up. Shall I go fetch him? Do us all a favor. Ridley marched sternly, heading for Blake. He was already sick of the Doberman's cynical mannerisms. Why must you always pretend that you hate every minute of everything? It doesn't make you more attractive, it makes you a bore to deal with. I will break your kneecaps, you jackanapes? I will break your kneecaps, you jackanape. It's been half an hour of married couple hating each other jokes, interspersed with the occasional woman or horse jokes. Tell me that's good entertainment, I dare you. The bear kept silent for a few seconds. Alright, you might have a point. See? Cedric rolled his eyes, leaving the alleged couple to their argument, and made his way to the front row, tapping the hyena on the back to get his attention. Who? Ah. Cedric, my lad, is it time to leave? Is he enjoying the play? Have you been enjoying the play so far? The hyena chuckled. It is not exactly high art. However, I must congratulate the actors. They're doing a fine job. Of course, back in the day, I too had my fair share of atrociously written parts handed to me. Dion's unintentionally loud words caused one of the actors closest to him to glare at him upon hearing that remark. However, the bandit took no notice of this. I was forced to act out each and every one of them convincingly as I could. I suppose I was spoiled whilst I was still living with my parents. Lysander and I would travel for every couple of months to visit the grandest theaters that I've ever seen, and the performances were often brilliant. Cedric noticed the bandit was still observing the actors on stage. We can wait a couple more minutes if you like. You're very kind, Cedric. However, I do not want to keep you or the others waiting any longer. Lead the way, lad. I will follow. Dion tiptoed behind Cedric, crouching down as to avoid blocking the other spectators' view of the performances and apologizing profusely as he went. Once they'd reached the opposite corner of the square, the two reunited with the others, and without wasting more time, they rapidly made their way along the noisy streets to the southern gate. It's funny that I've visited this town at least a dozen times, yet I've never seen this much commotion. The wealthy bastards hosting the ball surely have done this place a favor or two. Blake leaned over, displaying a malicious grin on his muzzle. Says our rich intern hire boy. I provoke him. Call me that again and I'll slice your hands off, punk. The Doberman turned to Ridley, feigning outrage and placing his left hand over his mouth. Did you hear what he said to me? You have my blessing, Ced. I've been threatened. Really do something. You know, I'm starting to think that you two might be a married couple that awful play was about. The moment that they each set foot outside the old city gates, the bandits sighted Hollis's carriage and spied Victor and the tiger moving the last few boxes onto the vehicle. Thinking quickly, Cedric rushed up to the fox since he was looking in the opposite direction and had yet to take notice of any of them. A gloved hand covered Victor's eyes. Guess who? The fox replied jokingly, letting out an exasperated gasp. Lysander? The very same. Cedric moves his hand away, spinning his lover around to face him. Bandits, beware! Victor was unable to contain a huge grin at the sight of his boyfriend being a lovable fool. How did the journey into town go, handsome? It was all right. I managed to purchase all the clothing that we needed for the ball. I'm proud of you, but that should go without saying. Holly stepped out of the carriage, holding a bottle in one hand and wiping some sweat off of his forehead with the other. He looked just about ready to head back to camp and do nothing for the rest of the day. Afternoon all. So, who's cooking dinner tonight? Because I'm not. I can assure you. I'll offer. I don't mind cooking for all of us if you're not feeling up to it. I could fry that bacon that we have left with some vegetables on as a side. Bless you. I knew I always liked you from the start, lad. Unless this is just an attempt at getting into bed with me, in which case you're a rotten scoundrel. Cedric chuckled, replying confidently. Favors for favors, my dear Hollis. The tiger playfully crossed his arms, shaking his head. I knew it. I really can't trust any of you boys. The bandits kept up the banter and jokes on the way back to their campsite, following the heavy horses Hollis had borrowed from a local farmer to pull his old carriage. Victor lowered his voice, moving closer to the coyote and muttering with a hint of restlessness. Speaking of Lysander, though, we need to consider the fact that he might also attend the ball. That thought had crossed my mind, but quite frankly, I think we have nothing to worry about. Within that building, he'll just be a guest like any other, and we'll all be fully disguised anyway. Oh right, almost forgot. He most likely won't be there at all. Why's that? He's always away in early December, travels up north with his family to a property in Scotland. It's a tradition of theirs. Another property? How many estates do these fuckers even own? Cedric laughed. Too many. His parents' main residence is about a half an hour's journey west of our hometown, but he doesn't enjoy spending time with them, as you know, hence why both of us were living with his aunt all those months. His relatives own at least 2 other properties, he mentioned, though I've never visited either of them. Guards! Each of the bandits instantly turned to look in the direction the hyena was pointing at. Sure enough, on the road, far up ahead, compared to where the bandits were standing, a group of 5 or 6 figures dressed in red uniforms were approaching at a marching pace. Gentlemen, you all know what to do. At Dion's command, the group resumed their conversations, making use of their acting skills. This obviously wasn't the first time that they'd had to put on this particular act, but they had to be even more careful now that they counted Cedric as one of their members. They'd crossed paths with some soldiers after having left their old hideout. Though they'd inevitably been lucky enough to not attract too much attention, they hadn't been stopped nor had they been questioned as to who they were or where they were going. The 2 groups inevitably converged at long last, the bandits waiting with bated breath, praying that they wouldn't be stopped. The guards looked tired and disinterested in them after what must have been a very long watch. They couldn't be bothered wasting more time getting back to Hillsford, and a couple of them vanished out of the corner of Cedric's eye. Afternoon, sirs, and where may you be heading? Their hopes were crushed by the collie's voice, cutting through the air around them like a razor. The guards surrounded the gang, and Dion greeted them with an elegant bow, putting on a very convincing West Country accent. I don't know what that is. God be with you all, sirs. We are but a wandering troupe of actors on their way to the next town, doing their best to entertain and bring some happiness and excitement to poor country folk. The captain's expression remained unvaried. No woman among you? I thought we'd moved on as a country since the 1600s. The hyena let out a nervous laugh. His performance so far was flawless. Quite right, quite right. But alas, you encounter us during a most challenging period for our company. Our 2 female colleagues have left us only recently due to... He coughed. Professional disagreements. It pains me to hear that. Now, it wouldn't usually be our place to question you like this. However, we have been given orders to look out for a group of bandits last seen a couple of days' journey northwest from here. What's more, we've been told that there are about 5 or 6 of them. What are you insinuating, sir? The collie ignored Blake's jab. Might I see any documents testifying that you are indeed actors, gentlemen? Cedric's heart began to beat faster. Dion had never mentioned owning any papers or false documents that would help them pass as a traveling theater company. In fact, the couple times that they'd all gone over what to say and do should they encounter any guards, the hyena had forced them each to memorize their own fake name and had simply instructed them to repeat the name of their company and the year that it was founded when questioned. He gently slid his gloved hand downwards towards the pistol that he kept hidden in a leather purse tied to one of his belts. As he did so, he noticed Victor was also reaching for his rapier. Things had the potential to escalate extremely fast. You may indeed, sir. Just give me a second. Dion rummaged around the small bag that he was carrying, producing a piece of rolled parchment covered in stains, which he handed to the captain. The collie inspected it, noticing the official-looking stamp the document bore. The Dionysian Theater Company. And you're Mr. Norman Winterson, I presume? The same, at your service. Lengthy moments of silence followed until the captain reached the end of the certificate. Perhaps we may attend one of your performances soon. Good luck on the rest of your journey. He handed the paper back to Dion, signaling to the others that they should resume their marching. Good day to you, gentlemen. The masquerade did their very best not to audibly breathe a massive sigh of relief as soon as the guards began to move, heading back to Hillsford and out of sight. My heart is racing. Dion, why the hell didn't you tell us that you actually had that paper? We were scared shitless for a moment. He chuckled and turned to his partner. Sid and I both reached for our weapons at the exact same time. Oh, it must have just slipped my mind. You're supposed to be a responsible leader. The hyena grumbled. And as such, I won't be questioned. It got us out of trouble, didn't I? Is that document actually a fake? Of course not. It's my old company certificate, stamped by the local authorities. An hour later, all the bandits were sitting around the campfire discussing the day's events while enjoying a good meal. To no one's surprise, Cedric and Victor were sitting next to each other, laughing and joking while Cedric took some long sips from his cider-filled mug, slurring his words a little. When's our next robbery? I've been itching for some rich devil's gold for weeks now. Easy now, handsome. You know we've had to stay on the down low lately for more than a couple of reasons. Aye. But I've noticed how eerily fast our previous savings ended up getting spent on food and drink. That's life, my dear. Saving up is an arduous task, and when you have your own mouth as well as 6 others to feed, it grows tougher still. You won't be complaining in 3 days' time, Cedric. You can be sure of that. Indeed not. It is shaping up to be our greatest accomplishment yet. Don't you dare go about disappointing me, lads. Tomorrow we'll be going over the plan. I'll be giving careful consideration to everyone's thoughts and inputs, so if you don't speak up then, I don't want to hear a word out of your mouth if something you do goes wrong. After that, we'll all try our costumes on to see if Rid needs to make any last-minute adjustments. Dion examined the coyote with a mischievous spark in his eye. At last but not least, Cedric will be schooling us in the manner of upper-class society, lest we make any mistake that could prove fatal during our time at the ball. Cedric almost spat out his drink. I what? Nobody had told me about this. Relax, Cedric. What could go wrong? What bandit would be better than you to teach us how to blend in amongst a crowd of filthy aristocrats? Oh, that's not the issue, love. The coyote took a long pause before speaking up again, purposefully letting tension build since Victor obviously had no idea where he was going with this. First things first, I have not made a list of subjects to teach you all, which I can then use to plan a number of short lessons. Second, I need to write a small paragraph on each subject. What the? That is extremely important. Victor snorted, poking his partner with his left elbow. You twat. You almost had me worried for a moment. The coyote kept up the banter. You might not understand, but I need my careful constructed lists and plans to rely upon when teaching anything. Selwyn knows what I'm talking about, don't you, Sel? The house cat nodded eagerly. Just give me a list of the subjects that you want to teach, and I'll be happy to map them out and organize your lessons for you. The fox got up from the log he had been resting on and pretended to walk away. This is too much. The geeks have been allowed to run wild and soon will be flooded with charts and diagrams. Victor wouldn't know what a diagram even is. I've seen how he usually plots his heists, the jump right in and pray nothing goes wrong technique. Always a classic. You, Sir Bear, are a fucking liar. Cedric addressed Dion again, his composure more serious. All joking aside, I'll be more than happy to give you all a few lessons. It'll just be a tad surreal attempting to return to the ways of the upper classes now that I've gotten so used to living with all of you. Quite frankly, I'd forgotten Ced was born a nobleman. The coyote's eyes widened. Bloody hell, I think that might be the greatest compliment anyone has ever given me. The tiger ignored the comment, continuing his train of thought. Especially after that cursing contest you and Blake had the other evening. Dion brought a hand to his forehead with a characteristically melodramatic gesture. Please do not remind me of that. You lot have corrupted my beloved Cedric into the most vile ruffian. Come on, Dion. You know that I can be the finest gentleman if needed. Just watch. Cedric stood up, performing an elegant bow, during which he extended his right hand in Victor's direction. Will you join me for a dance, my beloved? The fox brought his left hand to his chest. No, my good sir. I couldn't possibly. Go on, Victor. Stop fooling around and just take his hand, bitch. We all know you want to. Victor then took the coyote's hand and stood up at long last. But we have no music to accompany us, my dear. You would think that, wouldn't you? However, an old tiger has his ways. As if by magic, a withered and battered lute had appeared on Hollis's lap. Never know when this might come in handy. The tiger spent a few seconds attempting to tune the old instrument and then began to pluck its strings, playing a sweet, whittling melody. The dance was brief but intense. Neither of the two knew exactly what they were doing on top of being mildly inebriated, but if anything, that made things more fun. This was something that they had yet to experience together, and at this precise moment, to Cedric it felt like a fairy tale come true. He could feel Victor's soft breaths mere inches away, and despite not speaking a word, the level of closeness that he felt to the fox was immense. As the tiger slowed down the rhythm to bring the dance to a close, the couple exchanged a brief but passionate kiss. You two lovebirds really couldn't be sweeter if you tried. That was beautiful. The rest of the bandits all nodded, or aye-ayed in agreement, not wanting to ruin the atmosphere by joking or clapping loudly. They all got up from their seats, handing their plates to Selwyn, who briskly headed to the stream to rinse everything. Okay. I've already seen both of these scenes, and you're basically gonna spend, quote-unquote, some time, if you get their meaning, with either of these people, with either Hollis, which is a tiger, and Victor, which is, Cedric's boyfriend, or with Dion, which is the leader. Unfortunately for you guys, I have to skip this. Let me tell you though, both are pretty spicy. An hour later, Cedric was lying on his tent's bed next to Victor after a quick evening wash. Because they got really dirty. Bathing in the stream, like they've gotten used to doing a few months earlier, was no longer an option since the cold weather had kicked in. Thus, they had to make do with warming some water over the fire using Hollis's cooking pans. The main issue with this was that it took much longer. It was definitely worth it to stay clean. Adjusting to sleeping outdoors in the autumn had proven to be quite tough for the coyote, but he'd braced himself for it and tried his best not to complain about any minor inconveniences. Though after a few weeks, he had not so gently suggested to the group that they should all purchase some bed warmers when in town. Despite laughing off the notion at first, the others had since come around to the idea, and now none of them could do without the warmers during the night. After getting cozy under the bed sheets, Victor and Cedric were enjoying a quiet moment, gazing at the white fabric above them whilst holding hands. I love our friends. This gang, they're just some of the most fun people that I've met, and that I enjoy being around. It's gonna be tough parting ways with them. We're in a philosophical mood, are we? You rogue. You know the way that I am late in the evening. It's been a long day. I jest. You are very right. They're the family younger me wished that he had. Victor sighed. I can't believe the ball is only a couple of days away. It's been looming over the horizon for an eternity, and now all of a sudden, here we are. Cedric smiled, rolling over to make eye contact with the fox. Are you excited? To pay off all my debt and begin a new life with you? You bet I am. As for the heist itself, well, we've never done something on such a big scale. It's going to be challenging, but I have no doubt that we'll be able to pull it off brilliantly. I'll be honest, I'm a little terrified. You would be a fool if you weren't, my dear. But this is just going to be pickpocketing on a larger scale, so to speak. I'm sure that we'll all be up to the challenge. What terrifies me most is learning and remembering the upper-class etiquette, frankly. You surely remember some customs from our childhood days, don't you? Now, what did we say about dwelling on the past? I'm not. It's merely related to the subject at hand. Victor gave his partner a wink. Sure it is. Well, do you? I suppose it's just that I was always on the other end of things, witnessing these behaviors instead of engaging in them. Yes, I hadn't considered observing isn't the same as being directly involved. But I promise that it's nothing to be worried about. Plus, a certain ex-nobleman will be giving you some lessons on all of that tomorrow. That's going to be really helpful. Supposing I see anyone I know? That would be terrifying. Oh, what would I even do? Victor chuckled, placing a hand on Cedric's shoulder and playfully shaking him. Sweetheart, it's a masked ball, remember? You won't be recognizing anyone, and they won't be recognizing you. That's the point. The coyote yawned loudly. Oh, yes, so it is. I'm sorry, I'm not thinking straight. You just need a good night's sleep. Victor leaned over to blow out the last lit candle in the tent. I'll see you in the morning. Aye, good night, love. Good night, men like her. I'm gonna slap you. Despite it only being early December, there was already a Christmassy feeling in the air throughout Cedric's hometown. Advent had begun. The churches already echoed with carols, and folks seemed to be in brighter spirits than usual. All of that was missing were some white, snow-covered streets to complete the picturesque look. Surely it was only a matter of days before the first snowfall of the year reached the West Country. The sky had been overcast for days and had turned into a wintry pale white. A couple hours after sunset, a well-dressed young boar rushed along the familiar lantern-adorned streets. Much like Ridley had years earlier, he'd started working as a tailor's apprentice, enduring the long and often boring shifts in the hope of opening his own shop one day. On this particular evening, he'd been tasked with delivering an outfit that had been made to measure for a rich client. He'd meticulously placed all items in the cylindrical box that he was now carrying. The boar heaved a sigh of relief upon reaching the address that he had been given by his master. This shouldn't have been complicated, but he'd somehow managed to lose his way twice since leaving the shop. Lifting his right arm, he struck the door 3 times with a brass knocker. As he waited, he used the boot scraper on the right of the steps leading up to the house's entrance. Just as he was about to knock again, the door swung open, and he was greeted by a young antelope. "Good evening, sir. What can I do for you?" "Evening, ma'am. I'm here with a set of clothes to be delivered to a Master Lysander. This is the correct address, is it not?" Nancy smiled, nodding her head. "You've come to the right place. Please, come in." The boar took off his hat as he set foot inside. "Would you like me to take your coat?" "No need. I shan't be staying long, I don't think. What's your name, my sweet?" "Nancy, sir." "Mine's Jim. I'm of no higher rank than you. No need to call me sir." "I'm sorry, I mean Jim." The two laughed. They were both evidently tired, and Nancy too couldn't wait to go home after yet another long day at Lysander's aunt's house. "Just give me a moment. I'll inquire after Master Lysander." The maid briefly disappeared into one of the rooms, returning less than a minute later with the lion. "Ah, finally. Is this everything?" Jim handed him the box. "Aye, sir. All neatly packed." "That will be all, I presume?" "Aye, sir. If anything doesn't fit, or if there's any sort of problem, let us know, and we'll get it fixed as fast as we possibly can." "You'd better. Time is of the essence. This was supposed to be ready a week ago, since I must be setting off for Hillsford tomorrow afternoon at the latest. This is an event that I simply must attend." "I can only apologize for that, sir." Lysander smiled coldly. "No matter. These things often happen after all. Good evening to you, sir." "Nancy, my parents are going to be visiting tomorrow. I'll have already left by then, so please remind them that I won't be joining them in Scotland this year." "Certainly, sir." Knowing that pair, they probably weren't paying attention each of the 3 times that I told them. He turns around, heading back upstairs with the large box in his hands. Instead of entering his own room, he walked past it and into the adjacent chamber, which used to belong to Cedric's back when the coyote was still living there. This had been left exactly as it was for months, at Lysander's orders. The suits Cedric hadn't taken with him on the day he left were still hanging in the wardrobe, along with the neatly folded breeches and stockings in many of the drawers. The only exceptions were some items the lion had added, most notably the chessboard that he had placed on the table in front of the gold-framed mirror. The very same chessboard the coyote had stolen the white knight piece from, a piece which had been proudly displayed at its center ever since the lion had gotten it back. Another new item hung on the wall opposite the mirror, a double portrait of Lysander and Cedric the lion had commissioned. In the painting, Cedric was shown seated in the foreground, with Lysander standing behind him, a hand placed on the coyote's right shoulder. A gesture the lion wouldn't have reserved for anyone else, not even his parents. A gesture which seemed to hint at more than merely friendly affection. Despite such few changes, or perhaps because of them, it was as if this chamber had now become a temple dedicated to Cedric. Lysander shut the door behind him and placed the box on the bed, pulling off the lid and admiring its contents. An almost perverted grin covered his muzzle. This was exactly what he wanted. Gently, more so than the lion needed, he lifted out the item core to his upcoming event attendance. A simple masquerade mask. To be continued. Hello, and thank you for reading this fifth build for Project New Moon's A Fall from Grace. This has been yet another lengthy build, full of new backgrounds and illustrations, so we really hope that you've enjoyed reading and we can't wait to share the rest of the story with you all. This novel is written by, composed by, and illustrated by project developer Alex, with Grayson as relief coder, music programmer, and story designer. I've tried my hand at coding for those last two builds specifically. It's been fun figuring things out while trying to maintain the style AFFG has had so far. If anything crashes, you know who to blame. Plus, this time we've had actual dialect choices. In this VN, this visual novel's entire plot, start to finish, was conceived on 2 voice calls between Grayson and myself back in around March of 2022. We had so much fun designing a story that utilizes Alex's gorgeous way of setting places and characters, and Gray's ability to yes and a VN plot over 2 calls. This has been a passion project that I have been so excited to be a part of, and continue to be excited with the continuation of. A Fall from Grace represents more than just a visual novel, it is also the story of how Alex and I became best friends. Ever since the first message of, "Hey, I love your art," on Twitter. Then following this, the idea of A Fall from Grace came about very quickly after Grayson offered me a place on the Project New Moon team. A special thanks also to Mash, the chief editor, proofreader, and storyline aide for the project. Without Mash's help, we would not be able to release this or any of the previous builds to you now. And a big thanks to our coder, Kamek, for his own hard work on the third build, as well as salvaging mine and Grayson's coding work into a visual novel that works from start to finish. Special thanks to Marcy of Eden's Reach for helping with certain elements of the coding, as well as a massive thank you to everyone in Project New Moon's Discord server and our amazing moderator, Okami, Butter, Gary, and Thunger. I hope you enjoy the OST written by Alex. No expenses were spared when Alex suggested a soundtrack based on English folk songs. Though I did sneak one track into the second build for the Soldier's March, just based on the piece of music that Alex and I both adore. If you did enjoy the visual novel, be sure to follow us both on Twitter using the icons in the main menu. We also have a link to our Discord server here too. Please join if you enjoyed this visual novel. We would love to see you in our Discord community. Also consider following Project New Moon on HIO as well. We also have a link on the main menu to our Patreon if you would like early access to both A Fall from Grace's build as well as other New Moon projects. We will post early script drafts, concept art, and character art on the Patreon too, so if you like what we're doing and want bonus content and early access, it's all there. Thank you all. Hope you enjoyed Project New Moon's A Fall from Grace. Oh, Eden's Reach, I hope you update sooner or later. You too, One Last Night. I think One Last Night is close to updating. Eden's Reach is still on hiatus. I have seen that they do have like works in progress and stuff like that of what they're doing. And when they do release it, it's going to be a whole lot of content that's going to be released all at once. Boy, has it been a while. Anyways, so. Lysander. I mean, it's obvious that if nothing else, he fell for Cedric. But as with most toxic people or toxic masculinity, rather than just coming out and saying it or admitting it, he I guess internalized it, but it became possessiveness and just aggressiveness and just being annoying in general. Like, I'm pretty sure if Lysander had told Cedric, like, "Hey, I know this is crazy, but you wanna, you wanna try it out as a couple, even though it would be very weird." But like, I think he's too proud, and there's a whole like high society thing and things like that that keep him from being able to actually say like, "Hey, Coyote, I like you. You wanna maybe, And now that said coyote is with the fox, it's kind of late. And even if, and I'm assuming that it's going to happen eventually, Lysander ends up finding Cedric and ends up, I guess, bringing him back home, that it's not going to be the same. But yeah, these are all the things that we see coming, obviously. I mean, it's going to happen eventually. Uh, and it might even happen during the whole little heist that they're trying to pull. Hmm. Anywho, what else happens? Obviously, there were some scenes that you couldn't see because, I mean, they're NSFW, like I said, it's stuff that I can't put on YouTube. Despite the fact that one person did tell me, like, oh, well, you should just add it instead of removing it. Like, bitch, this is my channel. If you want to put that on YouTube and then get banned, then by all means, and I know some people do it, but they shouldn't. I know technically I could get away with it by putting the 18 plus rating on the video, but then people wouldn't be able to see it. Like a large. Actually, I believe Europeans wouldn't be able to see it because then you have to verify your age, and a lot of people wouldn't want to do that because then it's giving YouTube, some personal information. And in the US, you could just get around that. So, like, I'd rather just not mess with that. Anywho, but yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what happens. I did think that the talk with Dion was going to go a lot worse, but it actually ended up going really good. He is a good leader. I mean, I may just be a little bit biased on hyenas. I wonder why. Anywho, so what are your thoughts? Write it down in the comments, and thank you all for watching / listening. If you would like to play A Fall from Grace, or Eden's Reach, or One Last Night, you can do so by going down into the link in the description, which have a direct link where you can hopefully download these games. I will also be posting down a link for their Patreon, like they said. You get early access to a whole bunch of stuff, get behind the scenes things, etc., etc. That will be linked down in the description, as along with the channel member link in case you want to watch these videos as they're being scheduled, ahead of time. And, it does support the channel. It does help. And it does support me. And also Ko-fi in case you want to support through there. And also Throne in case you want to, in case you feel generous, it's there. I got books. From there, so yay. Anyway, so yeah, I guess that's it for now, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.